Good morning, good morning, everybody. Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're catching us from. So it is Friday, and Friday is a day we love to talk about real estate. We love to talk about real estate any time of day or night. It doesn't really matter because it affects all of us. Now, before I jump on with Ari and we start talking about what's going on today and in our world of real estate, because things are changing really quickly, I want to let something know to you. I want you to think something about this. Now, maybe you're not in the position right now that you're looking to jump into real estate. Maybe you've already got what you want and you're happy where you are. That's not the reason of this all. You see, what we need to do is, first of all, we always need to know what's going on around us. It's really so important in life, whether you're involved in the market or you're not, or you want to get involved. And everybody thinks at this point in time, because the interest rates are rising, that it's not a good time. You know what? The reason for this is to help you think. Think outside the box. Think about things that are happening in your life. For me, I'm an empowerment coach. I'm here to empower you. I'm here to empower you to believe in yourself, to start looking at different opportunities. And the more you listen to different things, the more your mind starts to think. So today, first of all, welcome back, Ari. I haven't seen you in a little bit because you've been busy in your own life because you have just ended up buying a brand new property, right? So tell us what's going on.
Well, I purchased a property, bungalow. It's quite nice because you can actually purchase properties with land now without getting into bidding wars, and you're able to do a proper inspection and actually taking your time and being able to go through all the steps. So on the buying side, it's quite nice, and it's definitely something that you should take advantage of if you are thinking about buying. On the selling side, it was a little tricky, but you just need to know how to navigate through the sale of your home. Pricing is obviously very important, and because the market is so fluid, it's changing quite a bit. Almost, I'd say, every few months, right? Like we just had another interest rate hike. So you really need to know what you're doing on that side as well. But yeah, it was definitely an opportunity that I saw in the market and took advantage of it.
And so let's talk about that, because I know people are always thinking right now, there's just no way I can get into it. It's not working for me. And you know what? That's not true though, is it?
No, and like I said in the past, if people or whoever was watching this, rent's still going up, right? So the rent's increasing, and really, what options do we have? Either we rent properties or we buy properties, and if you're able to get the financing, really the conversation should be, what can you afford, and if it suits you. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to say buy a one-bedroom condo if you're a family of four. But, I would say in the long run, there's always that equity part that you build. And I always recommend to do that, because ultimately, even they were talking about the interest this morning on the news, and they said, hopefully this is the last one. And eventually, like, they think next year, when they sit down to talk about the rates again, it might not go up. It might actually even go down, right? So, sooner or later, it will go down. What goes up must come down. And when it does go down, they'll continue building. They're also, not to jump ahead, but they're also talking about opening up the green belt. And
So can you explain, before you just, sorry, not trying to explain to people who don't know what a green belt is?
So it's basically land that is not open for development. It's like green space. It's where it's just north of Toronto, the GTA, and it's a whole area that they basically put off limits for development because they wanted to keep it as green space. And now, because they're obviously recognizing the lack of housing issue that we have, they are now thinking about opening it up a little bit to build more houses. Obviously, there's a lot of people against it as well. I'm not going to get into what's right and wrong, because even I don't know what's right and wrong. I'm sure nobody does. It's at the end of the day, I don't get into politics, but I do know that they recognize that we have a lack of housing issue, right? So going back to that point where, yes, right now the prices have gone down, but doesn't mean it's going to stay down, because once the rates go back down, we're still going to have the same problem, which is lack of housing. And even if they start building now, even if they open up the green space, the green belt and start building, they're still going to have a little bit of an issue, because it's going to take time. Like, it could take a few years until they develop everything, and it's not necessarily enough anyways, because based and back to the immigration status, right? Like, they're letting in a lot of immigrants every year. I think Canada is over 350,000 every year that they let in. So, everyone needs a place to live, and it all goes back to two places: either you rent something or you buy something, right? So it's kind of like very, very basic. Like, if you can afford something that even as a starter home suits you and your family, go for it. That's what I say, because rent is 100%. Like, if you're worried about interest rate right now, for example, a lot of people say, well, it's high interest rate, so I'm going to have high payments, and I'm paying most of it to interest, not principal. So I'm not paying down my mortgage. Well, if you compare that with rent, you're paying 100% interest, meaning all that money goes to your landlord. You're not paying down your mortgage either. You're not paying down any equity. You don't have equity, you don't own anything in that property. But on the flip side, when the interest rate will go down, and say you bought today, you will build equity, because eventually you will build that equity based on the fact that the interest rate will go down and you'll start paying off more principal, right? So, it's definitely one of those things where it really depends on someone's situation. I'm not saying every scenario is you should buy. I've had people that they move around because of jobs, so they can't buy, right? And sometimes their jobs subsidize their rent. They pay their rent or a portion of it, so they don't need to buy. It all depends on your situation, but I'd say the majority of people are not like that. The majority of people have, steady jobs. They're not traveling. They have families, and they're in the position where they can potentially buy. Now, if you're someone who already owns a home, then either stay put. Obviously, if you like your home, and if you're not planning on making a move in the next 5 to 10 years, but if you are thinking about making a move in the next 5 years or so, I'd say do it now, because once the rate changes again and it starts kind of cooling down, they tame inflation, there's still going to be, I believe there's still going to be, not as it was through COVID, like crazy bidding wars. I still think there's going to be bidding wars, and then you're not going to get to do that whole inspection thing. And so what's more important, right? Getting a bidding war on your house, or getting your inspection done and buying a home that you're not going to get into, like, jeopardize buying something that's like a problem.
So in other words, also for people, just so you think of things, like, people are thinking themselves, but interest rates are high. But let me tell you something else. When you sit down and do the numbers, interest rates are higher. However, property values have dropped down. So if you start looking at your numbers, and we're not going to go into numbers here, but if your numbers are lower, even with interest rates are higher, I saw where we were looking at numbers. I was working with somebody else who was looking to buy a property. It actually turned around that they were actually saving money than they were turning around and spending more on a monthly basis, because some of the property values have now started to soften. So. Well, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so like, say for example, like, when I'm just gonna I'll put like an example of a few numbers, right? So say there was a property for 1.2 million, you can probably pick it up for 950. Okay, that's $250,000 in savings. you're temporarily paying higher amount of mortgage, but eventually that mortgage will kind of adjust itself when the interest rates go down, but you still save that $250,000. So that's one example, right? Another example is, and this is actually, I'm looking at this is like obviously completely like general, because this is the sales average but priced by major home type. So this is like all of the GTA, I guess. So to give you an idea, from 21 to 22, which is really the biggest difference, right? So 21 was like boom, 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 like real estate boom, right? And now in 22, it's now completely the opposite because of the interest rate. So in October, since last October, the average price, this is the average price, right, went from 1,155,624, so 1,155,000, right, to 1,000,089. So we're looking at like, to make it simple, 5.7% drop. It's not a huge amount. I mean, overall, for a big number like that, it is a big drop. Again, this is just average. So like, there's definitely deals out there, like, you know, a house that sells from 1.2 to 950, as the example I gave you. But I mean, realistically, that in 1 year to see a drop like that, that's an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
That's an opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but you know that's what I do.
Okay.
You know, and that's the whole idea, people. So when you're watching this, that is what I'm trying to show you. You know, it's thinking outside the box. It's like that's a small opportunity, but there's also larger opportunities out there. There's also different ways of now starting to look at things. We have to look at life in a different way. This is also times when there is a lot more opportunities out there. So we have to look at ways that we can all learn to take up on opportunities, because we have to start thinking differently. When we start thinking in our own mind that, you know what, this is it, you know, my life is falling apart, I don't know what to do, you can't think in those ways. And that's what I do, is I try to encourage you to start looking at things in a different manner, of believing that an opportunity can come around. It's just learning to, first of all, go out there and find yourself somebody like Ari, you know, like a realtor in your area, somebody that you can form a relationship with that will help you find other opportunities. Speak to people in the know. And it's not even just real estate. We're talking about even different types of businesses, even just looking at your own life, no matter what you're going through. It's all about being open to seeing what is possible for you. And there is opportunities in all different forms of your life. So this is, you know, why this, I feel this show is important, is just to have you, you know, like for me, it's always been about learning to, of looking and learning to think outside the box. Because you know what? We don't have to have ourselves in a box thinking that the walls are closing in on us. If nothing else, you're actually looking at ways of life is actually expanding for you.
Here's another, like just an example of opportunity, right? So through the pandemic, a lot of people moved away from the GTA. A lot of people worked from home, so they, you know, they didn't need that location anymore in the GTA. They wanted to sell their condos, for example, for like $1 million and buy you know, a property on the outskirts. A lot of them also bought cottages or secondary properties. Now, there's a lot of individuals that have this variable mortgage and they own secondary properties, and those secondary properties now costing them a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they're selling them, right? So you could find a property an hour away from Toronto, even 2 hours away if you want, you know, if you don't mind living further. But you can find these properties, you know, people that are selling them right now for, you know, it's not even like a loss. It's just they drop the price pretty quick, and they're very aggressive on letting it go, right? Another
If you
opportunity.
can't afford it, then you have no other choice.
Right. Yeah. Well, what are you going to do? Are you gonna worry about your primary home and your family, or are you going to worry about that secondary property and try to carry it? Another opportunity is like people that don't know the real estate, I guess, options. So, for example, when I sold my property, I didn't sell it first. What I did was I bought first. Now, you would think that if you buy first, you're now in trouble because you have to sell your property and you have a gun to your head basically, and you have a certain amount to sell. Well, that's not the case, because you could put a condition. That's what I was saying earlier. You have the luxury of now being able to put the condition of for sale by owner, like meaning like sell purchaser's property. So I put a condition saying that this deal falls apart if I don't sell my property by, say, next month or the month after, like 45 days, right? I can give them a certain amount of time. You can negotiate that, obviously. And you could say, like, I want 60 days to sell my property. And if I don't get to sell my property at my price, so there's no dictation of like, hey, this is the price. You just basically put that condition. You know what? The seller can also refuse it. In my case, they cooperated. They worked with me and they said, sure, like, we're not in a rush. We're not like super desperate to sell. Although you never know people's situation, right? So first we negotiated a good price on their property that I purchased. And then I took my time and sold my property, right? So I was able to do everything stress-free, right? And realistically, like, not everybody knows that. Like, I've seen situations where, and I hate to say it, this is not going back to bash real estate agents. You never know the situation, but sometimes they don't have that condition, right? It could just be that they didn't know about it, or maybe the seller didn't accept it. So what happened was the buyer buys a property and they have to sell now. They have to sell within, say, 60 days. And as time goes by, because, I've seen the situation where, somebody buys a property and says, yeah, no problem, my property will sell. And my property is amazing. It's got everything, all these upgrades. And guess what? It still took me about 45 days to sell my property. So, like, think about a situation where somebody gets cocky and all of a sudden, gets caught in a situation where they have 30 days to sell their property. They have to sell their property. They thought it would sell, in the first week or two. Because a lot of sellers have that mentality. They don't watch the news. They don't know what's going on in the market. When you go to sell a property, sometimes sellers, they're still thinking the old way. Like, yeah, I'm not worried about my property. It's my job as a real estate agent to make them worry about it, right? But a lot of sellers will not do that, and sometimes agents will not fight them on it. They'll say, okay, you know what? Fine. Let's purchase this property and we'll sell yours. And all of a sudden, you put it on the market, a week passes, 2 weeks, 3, 4 weeks pass by, and you're not sold. And now you're starting to panic because you have, 2, 3 weeks to close on your new property. And the bank says, you're not getting the mortgage. You're not getting the mortgage until you sell your house, or at least have an agreement, a firm agreement, a purchase and sale in your hand that you have a buyer that bought your house. So now you start dropping your price like crazy. Like, we're not talking about like a little bit. We're saying 50, 100,000 a week. And I've seen this, right? So if you're not even a first time buyer, if you own a property and you're thinking, eventually in the next 3 years or 5 years, I want to buy something else. Like in my case, I'll give you an example. Why did I do this move? Because I always wanted a bungalow. A bungalow is more rare. A bungalow, like one level. I'm not talking about, it has like 5 stairs. Just a bungalow. I mean, I'm not thinking so far ahead in the future, but they're rare. They're not going to be so easy to find. And I found the bungalow, all one level, 4 bedrooms. And the best part is the lot is 110 by 200. So it's exactly what I want. It's half an acre, right? And first of all, they're rare. Second of all, even if you found one in a regular market, it would be hard to get. Think about baby boomers, right? they want to buy those things. They have the money too. So I'd be competing with a lot of people that have money. And I could have bought it in a bidding war. I didn't. I put an inspection clause. And you know what? We found some issues, and I was able to get them to fix those issues. And those issues would have cost me $5,000 to fix easily, right? So, that's another thing, right? That $500 inspection saved me $5,000, right? So that's the second reason that I was lucky in the sense that I bought that property, and I was able to do that, right? So that's what I'm saying. So not to beat a dead horse, but this is a good opportunity. Like you said, this is a very good opportunity. If you don't, just be different. Like you said, think outside of the box, be different. Don't be like everybody else. Don't sit there and think that, you're going to wait, right? Because, in real estate, there's one thing that's always certain. When you talk to somebody about real estate, they always say, I wish I would have bought back then.
Yeah,
right?
We all kind of have that type of
mentality, right? So
that's part of life. We can't go back in our lives, but we do have to look back so we can see what lessons we have learned. And when we can pick up the lessons that we have learned, it can make us a lot wiser and a lot more powerful for our future. And so we're going to move on because we have some questions that I'm going to throw at you. We've had from people that have been watching, and I'm going to throw them at, and we're just going to hit on them, and so people will, and also so people know, please send us in questions, and we'll be thrilled to go through them from every week we'll try to go through some. So now, first question that a watcher has asked: what are the benefits and drawbacks of buying an old building versus buying a new construction when it comes to investing money into real estate?
That's a really good question. I love that question. So, this is, I'm going to give you some facts, but I'm also going to give you opinion, right? So I guess I'll start with the facts first, right? Obviously, if you're getting a brand new pre-construction or a new building, you're getting warranty, right? Just like anything else, you're getting a warranty. So there's like a thing, obviously there's a builder warranty, which is like a year, I believe. But then there's also like Tarion warranty, which is like the government warranty, right? The biggest difference is that Tarion covers you for major stuff, right? So like, I believe it's like a 1, 3, and a 7-year warranty. There's like different segments, but really the first year, like you can, for example, you take possession of a brand new build. The first thing that they're going to do is they're going to send a builder representative, and you'll walk around and you'll say, oh, there's a scratch on that doorway, or there's a little dent on the fridge door. Like if you get the appliances, obviously with the builder, and they'll replace it immediately, right? If there's like paint issues, they'll repaint, right? So they will basically take care of every single detail. And it's great in that sense, right? Because it's kind of like worry-free, stress-free, right? Now there's obviously difference. I'm not talking about the warranty, but there's difference when it comes to buying a pre-construction condo versus a house. It's a little bit of a different conversation. Same thing with the warranty though, everything stays the same. If you're buying a house pre-construction, typically there's, again, I'll try to stay with the advantage. The advantage is like you can pay in overtime, right? It could be 2 years pre-construction. You pay usually 20% down, and you can take your time. Now, what a lot of people kind of misunderstand, they think that because they might be in a better situation or they don't need to get an approval, they kind of lean towards pre-construction. That's not true. If you walk into a center today, they're going to ask you for pre-approval. They're going to want to know that you're going to be able to close even in 2025, right? So, and it's not like, oh, don't worry, I know somebody at the bank, right? They're going to want like an actual approval. So they're going to want to run your numbers. It's almost like you're going in to approve for a regular mortgage. Now, why am I saying that? Because, well, obviously, people think that, that's one of the reasons a lot of people kind of think they want to buy pre-construction because they're worried about getting approved right now. But it's the same thing. the negative part about it is like, think about it like this. So I always say to people that real estate, a house is like, it's not like a car. You know, when you buy a used car, what's one of the first or many questions that people ask? How many owners, right? Why do they ask that? Because they, you know, the more owners, the more issues usually, or like the more beat up the car is, right? Usually, not all the time, but usually when it comes to a house, it's the opposite. More owners means more upgrades. Every time, and I can tell you even myself, every time I move into a house or somebody moves into a house, the first thing they do is they dump some money into it, right? They fix stuff, they do stuff to it, they update it. So when you compare, one of the biggest comparisons, I would say, resale versus brand new. Sure, brand new, you're getting the warranty, but resale, if, and this is why it's important that we're talking about this, in this market, you're buying a resale, you're able to do your inspection. You're able to see what's in there, and you can actually buy a house with tons of upgrades. Like, to give you another example, to put in a swimming pool, and I know I looked into it, you're looking about $100,000 easy. That's some places. Okay, it could be even more. I think in Toronto, it's like somebody told me it's like 150,000. Really depends on like what you're looking for. But like the basic shell without landscaping is at least $80,000 to $100,000. When you buy a resale, you're really maybe paying an extra 20 or 30. Maybe you can actually get it for the same price.
So let's just break for a second and let me one other thing that I want to put into for those that might be watching this and don't live in Ontario. I ask you to look into your own area, wherever you're looking at buying and selling, and see what your government offers. If there is certain warranties, we're very fortunate where we live in Ontario that we have a lot of government support, that it protects the people, protects us. But it's not to say that your government doesn't have it. So when you're looking at real estate, it's really important to investigate of what the government in your area offers to support, to protect the buyers that there are, because there, you know, it's not just here, but it's all over where they do have certain things. So there are different type of programs that they do offer for people in other areas, not just Ontario, correct?
Yep. And I want to actually mention something when it comes to that as well. So when you're buying, a lot of people have the mentality of buying pre-construction is better built. It's not necessarily better built. You have to also remember, it's what you just talked about. It's all up to the builder. Like, don't quote me on this, but I believe that even in Canada, we don't, not all builders have to, I guess, like, subscribe or adhere to that warranty, to Tarion, right? Like a small builder, for example, might not give you that Tarion warranty, right? So I would say that, it really depends on the builder. And this is where it gets really tricky, because it's so hard to figure out what builder is actually like a really solid builder. I mean, you could go to even a really reputable builder, and remember, they buy all their, like, for example, quantity, like lumber, everything. They buy it all in large numbers, right? So even when they build homes, like, I don't know if you ever saw this, Glenda, but like, they go up so quick,
Yeah.
like, and it could mean that it's not like quality construction, right? They build in volume, right?
So I have bought many new homes through my years, and here's the thing. First of all, let me tell you something. Part of who I am, and all through every area of my life, is I'm a researcher. I check everything out for everything. It's just crazy. It's part of how my mind works. So start doing investigations. The condo that I'm in now, I bought brand new. I bought it from plans. A bit of huge advantage was, by the time my property by the time my building went up, my property had already gone up 20 25, 30% by the time it was built. So by the time they were already selling newer ones, or sorry, people who were just buying at that time, they were already buying at a higher rate. But what I did is I investigated the builder, how reputable they were, when things were wrong, how they handle situations, if they were involved with the tear-down, all these things you can find out. We live in a very easy world now because everything's on the internet. So it's really not as difficult anymore to do the research of it. So part of the really thing that I highly, highly, highly suggest is to do research. You're spending a fortune when you're buying a property. So part of that is learning to do the research so you're not disappointed by any things, and see what other people had said, ratings, how when people rate something, they also give they write down and they give a spiel about the person or the company. And so read all of these things, because no matter what, every type of industry or person you deal with in business, somewhere, some out there, there's testimonials about and how people have found a person or a company to be working with. So that's really important.
Yeah, and that's the thing too about condos, right? Like, so they're great because you have a building with obviously like a lot of people that live there, so it's easy to get that information. The other thing too you got to look at is like the status certificate, right? So you get that big binder like that you pass over to your lawyer, and keep in mind that you're I mean, this is not just pre-construction, right? But your lawyer will review and see what the paperwork is all about when it comes to that condo corporation, right? Now, if you're buying pre-construction, they're going to review the contract with the builder. But again, as you said, Linda, if it's a reputable builder, like I've dealt with Tridel a handful of times, and they're solid, right? So it really depends. A good thing that you can do is even pre-construction, like we deal with that, so we can help you buy, right? So a lot of people think, well, I'm going directly to the builder. Don't do that. Call an agent, right? An agent can actually still help you negotiate. They might not negotiate the price for you because the builders usually they don't give you a discount. But because you come in with an agent, and if that agent is reputable, and if that agent has a good relationship with the builder, you might get some kind of perk, right? Like a free locker. I've done that for my clients, and that's like a $5,000-$6,000 savings, right? Yeah. But yeah, those are the biggest differences. I mean, build quality. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I know like laws change all the time. Like as time goes by, building standards change. Some are better, some are not, right? Like some are more flexible, right? So I've seen that, and I've seen older homes that are built out of solid wood, right? And I've seen new homes that are built out of cardboard boxes, right?
Yeah,
like,
and I 100%. My last house that I had was incredibly. It was crafted. So I had oak everywhere. My family room was total solid oak. It was absolutely stunning, and it was because of the who the builder was and everything. Okay, we're going to move on because I want to hit some other things. What are the no's of real estate investing?
Well, that's kind of like a general question. I'm trying to think of I don't like general answers, right? No's of real estate investing.
Let's answer this to the best that we can. So what are the no's? I can think of the no is knowing your numbers first instead of jumping first. Know your numbers. So don't jump into something until you know what you're able to do first.
Okay, here's a no, right? So like obviously you have to. This is what I'm trying to think of, like real life experience, right? So I have investors that I work with, and they trust me. They trust me to the point that I will, tell them yes, no, do this, do that, and sometimes they don't even they're like out of town investors, right? Obviously, I have a relationship with them. I'll start from the beginning. Like to me, a big no is don't get a real estate agent just to tell them what to do. Okay. I don't care if you bought, 3 houses last year. You're not an expert, right? Like I buy and sell 20, 30 homes a year, right? So, and this is not about being cocky. It's about knowing the market. It's about doing this quite often. It's experience. When I walk into somebody else's business, for example, I honestly, I don't know nothing. I don't try to know nothing. I try to firstly find someone that I can trust and depend on. And then I work with them as a team, right? Because, you know, when you just kind of like try to point and say, go do that, go do this, you know, there are definitely people or agents that would do that and would work with you, but ultimately you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. I've gotten my clients a lot of really, really good deals. And I was also able to sell their properties for top dollar because they let me, right? They let me do my job. So the first no is don't just hook up with an agent that you don't know or you don't trust, or you're just gonna like, you know, not develop a relationship. That's in my book, that's number one. Number two, yeah, it's know the numbers, right? A good agent would sit with you and work on the numbers. Like, why are you buying a property, right? If you're buying it to rent it out, you need to know the numbers. You need to know what works, what doesn't. And don't just go to an agent. You need a good team around you, right? You need a lawyer, you need an accountant. And the agent is, a lot of good agents would have access to that, but you do. You need a good lawyer, good accountant. When somebody asks me a question, sometimes I say, okay, go talk to the accountant, right? Or let's ask the lawyer the question. I don't have all the answers. And that's the key, right? Having a good team when you're investing is really good. Sorry, see, now it's starting to flow, right? Don't listen to your family. Don't listen to your kids. Don't listen to people that say, don't do this, don't do that. You know what? See, when I do something and I love my family, I hope they're not watching, but
yep, it's true. You know what? They're the non-sayers, you know, they'll talk about what they did. You know what? I remember years ago when I bought my property at $100,000 less. Well, those aren't the days that we're in right now. Right? So all of these things are huge no's. And remember, even your friends are wonderful and we love them all. But, you know, there's times also, look who's talking. What are their accomplishments? Before you accept people for what they're telling you, look what they're accomplishing first. There's so many times where we see where people, you know, talk and chat, but they're unfortunately, you know, they're not the ones who are success. Are you with me? I think you might have froze. Okay, so we'll just keep on going since it looks like Ari has frozen on me a little. Oh, are we back?
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay,
well,
great.
that's
so yeah. So that's I heard everything you said. Yeah, I agree 100%. Look at their accomplishment. Look at what they're doing and where they are. But I mean, at the same time, I just don't really.
We seem to be having a little bit of difficulties with Ari this morning, so we're going to just keep on moving. When you're looking to attain something, if you have an idea, if you want, I highly suggest, like we're saying, look at who's giving the opinions. I also highly suggest that you don't tell everybody what you're doing, because you know what? Some of those people will be the first ones to knock you down. And then what ends up happening is you start to doubt yourself. When you have, again, having ideas of what you want, you need to learn to figure out who do you talk to. Well, we just lost him. I think he's going to jump out and jump back in. So learn to talk to who you want to talk to, but the ones that are accomplishing. Learn to connect with the people. Are you back with me now?
Yeah, I think, I had to refresh it. So Looks
We're
like
good.
it's better now.
So, okay. Any more no's?
I mean, there's a lot more now that I can actually come up with all of them. But like, I mean, another no I would say is don't do what everybody's doing. Like we talked about in this market, right? Like, don't listen to people. Don't listen to the news. And I know we just touched on that, but I'm talking about on a bigger scale. Don't follow the masses, right? If your situation is good and you're able to purchase a property or even sell a property, timing is everything. Talk to a real estate agent that knows the market and that is honest. Like if somebody came to me and said, like, I just want to sell my property. I'm sitting on say 3 properties right now and I want to sell them. I don't need to sell them. I'm not buying other properties. I just need to sell. I'm going to say no. Wait, right? Guaranteed it's gonna change. The market's gonna change. But it depends on the situation, right? If somebody says to me they want to do what I did, which is I want to sell my property because I want now to find the ultimate property. I want to find something, nicer. I want to move up, right? Or even not move up. Maybe you want to sell your big home and you want to move into a smaller home, right? You
Yeah.
can do it. It's all about logistics. It's all about timing, and it's all about knowing how to go about it. You're in the position of control if you initiate. If you wait for something to happen, it's not going to happen.
And the other thing is, remember, when you're looking for something for you need help and you're trying to find people that will help you and you're going to look and see if you're looking for a realtor, you have that right. Remember, you are the customer. You are the buyer. You have the right to ask questions, to sit there and negotiate. You also have the right to talk to many realtors. If somebody doesn't want to talk to you, then move on. That should be your biggest warning. Remember that when warnings happened, you've got to remember to listen. When something doesn't feel right, there's something telling you something. Listen to that internal voice. It will never steer you wrong.
Right. I agree.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. There's this new thing that's happening these days, and I know someone in the US that's really involved in this, and it's starting to happen here as well, is what do you think about tiny homes? Are they a viable living option for more people these days? Why or why not?
What do you think about a 315 square foot condo? My nephew bought one, right? So honestly, it's going to happen whether you like it or not. I believe that it's going to happen. That's why also, like for example, in condominiums, when you go to a building that's older, a lot of people say, well, I want a newer building. Yes, that's, definitely there's benefits there, but an older building, because they didn't have as much as lack of inventory, so lack of housing issues as we do today, they used to build them with like pretty decent size, right? So you're still getting like even the smallest unit, let's say 1 bedroom. I remember I saw a 1 bedroom in the building. The smallest one I think was like 900 square feet, right? Where today a 1 bedroom is typically 500 square feet, right? So it's going to happen, and I think the more even I think it's all over the world, right? The more the world gets populated, and I think we went up since who was it? I think they said since Donald Trump, 1 billion people in the world, right? So that's like 10 years, 1 billion people, right? So the population of the world went up, and I think it's going to happen, right? So what do I think about it? It all comes down to affordability. It's okay. One thing I'd like to always do is kind of compare Toronto to New York, right? If you look at New York, right, they're pretty much like way ahead of us in terms of how many people live there. And if you go to New York, even if you go there and you want to rent a hotel, you're not gonna like complain or think, oh, this is such a tiny room. If you're staying in Manhattan, if you're staying in the actual like New York, not outside of it, you're gonna almost kind of like accept the fact that you're gonna get like a tiny little 400, 500 square foot hotel room, right? And if you think about moving there because of job opportunity, for example, you're not even going to think about buying, right? It's almost like it's an acceptance that, hey, you know what? I'm moving to New York. No one's going to say, well, what, are you going to buy something or rent? It's not even a question, right? Because buying something in New York is very expensive. So, this is why everything is so small there, because it's all about obviously the amount of people that live in that city. In Canada, I think Toronto and Vancouver are really the two major hubs. Now, mind you, I've seen something recently that says how a lot of people are moving out. They're kind of spreading out. They're moving to other provinces because of price, because of living expenses. I mean, we're not just talking about real estate now, right? Like, we're talking about, food prices and everything else, inflation, right? And that, I don't think that's going to change that much. I don't think it's going to go down that much, maybe a little bit, but I still think, we have to get used to these prices. And, if that's the case, I think that it's going to happen. And I think that, again, if it suits you, if you can do it, if you don't have a family, for example, and you can buy something, even if it's small, do it, because the equity will be there. And at the end of the day, we're not talking about forever, right? We're talking about equity, right?
Well, and it's also maybe it's your opportunity to get into the market. So
exactly what I mean, yeah.
This is really an important point. Like, I believe that tiny homes, well, it sort of looks like this, and I look at it just as you were saying as well as condos, because nowadays a condo in Toronto is being built at 600 square feet, which is, in my opinion, would be like a matchbox. But what it teaches you, and even for me, I had downsized through twice, in the last while, and which is fine with me, is what it does is it makes you get rid of your stuff.
Tell me about it. You don't know how much stuff I just got rid of.
So stuff means, all through the years, so for me, it was having kids, and, every time I would go away on a trip, I would buy more little trinkets when, and and when I had a house, it didn't matter, because I had huge amounts of room. I had a large home, and it was really easy filling my, buying things, and it didn't really matter. But, as I moved, when I went from a house to a condo, and then I went from one condo to another, I had to, never mind, get rid of stuff that really didn't really matter as much to me. And it was more of, I looked at it as somewhat dust collectors, but I also had to go through clothing. But it's somehow actually really refreshing when you start going through and you get rid of things, because it stops all that clutter. I go through clothing every season. If I haven't worn it in over a year, then I'm not going to wear it. I do have certain classics things that I keep, because classic clothing that you spend a lot of money on, you will always be in style. But if it's really something, especially if size changes, start getting rid of things. It actually makes more room, and it brings in a lot of other things, like I always have this thing about, when you get rid of things, it leaves space to bring in new things. And I don't mean material things, right?
Yeah, it's baggage, right? Like, you realize, like, it's funny. So you said that, like, because I just moved, right? So there's stuff that I look at, I'm like I'm just automatically, on autopilot, like putting it into the pile that we're taking with us. And then I look at it again and I think, hey, you know what? When was the last time I even used this thing? Right. And so I started giving away a lot of stuff, right? And I realized, like, there's no point. And you're right. It feels so much better, because it's almost like, it also, I think, in a way, it humbles you, right? It makes you realize, like, why do I need all this stuff? Like, I bought this. You realize, obviously, you spend money on it, and you're like, it's hard to give it away or to throw it out. And you're thinking, like, I think I spent, like, I'll give you an example. I was, like, just moving some of the, like, obviously, so I had movers, but I still had to go back to my house one last time to clear everything up. And there was some, I'd say, junk, right? So there was this bar cart right? Really nice bar cart that I bought from Costco for like $200, right? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's $200. I just bought it like, I don't know, a year ago. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, you know what? Like, it's kind of sad, but like, I don't need it, right? I don't use it. So then my neighbor was outside, my old neighbor, and I said, hey, do you want a bar cart? And it's in like brand new condition. She's like, oh my God, yeah. And I gave it to her, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, like it's almost like you now know, think twice before you buy something, right? Like, don't just buy something if you don't need it, right? And you know, I think we're all guilty of that, right? Sometimes we buy stuff that we don't really need. So I think it's one of those things that, you know, you're moving to a new house. It's almost like a fresh start, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely like something that that helps you mentally. I don't know how, but it does.
No, but it does, because it clears up, you know. And here's the thing, you know, I have this agreement with myself. I have several different types of agreements with myself. And, you know, there's a lot of people that when they get nervous about things, or life isn't flowing the way that they need it to flow, and they go through, you know, their own anxiousness or whatever is going on with them mentally, that they go out shopping and they buy, right? Just for the sake of buying. I have an agreement with myself that when there's something over a certain price point, even now today of over $100, and what's $100 today?
I was going to say everything is over $100.
But when you know, it's just like, okay, online shopping. Let's start with this.
Sleep on it, right?
Put it in a shopping cart.
Yeah.
And come back to it the next day.
Even a week, right?
Well, not a week. You come back, just sleep on it.
See if you feel the same way.
Right. Okay. That's how I actually have stopped buying, is because instead of going in, you're not in a great mood, something's gone on, something triggered you. You all of a sudden, it's really easy going online shopping, and you start buying. Instead of doing that, put it in a shopping cart and close it. It will stay in the shopping cart.
Hey, guess what? That's the same thing you can do with real estate right now. You put an inspection clause, and you have 5 days to do an inspection. And if something comes out that you don't like, it's kind of the same thing. And you kind of get to sleep on it, right? You're able to put that property on hold. So.
And that's exactly it. You're going to a store, you see something, you want something. You know what? Come back the next day. Even ask the store nowadays. They'll do this for you in most 90% of places. You know, put it on hold for a day. Come back the next day, or take the store number with, and then the next day, do you still feel the same way? We are triggered sometimes, but what we go through to buy. Instead of buying, we're in a different world now. There's a lot of people going through some really hard stuff, but they haven't learned with what is going on. So, you know what? When you see something and you're triggered to grab it, stop, wait for another day, sleep on it. When you sleep on things, even one night, even if you're thinking of buying something and you're in a mall, walk out of there, come back 2 hours later. It changes everything. So it's something, you know, real estate is another whole situation. Now, thank God we're not in this bidding war trendy thing that we're worried that things are going to go away. Now, you know what? Especially something as high price as real estate. When we start sleeping on something, we start looking at things in a very different way.
Yeah, well, I just want to mention one more thing. So, like, you have to remember, in real estate, the biggest factor is on the buying side, right? When you're selling, it's different. You know what you're selling. You know the product. It's all about the number. It's all about pricing and the story, right? Obviously, there's negotiations and all that in marketing. But when you're buying a brand new home. You're buying, you know, something that has so many moving parts that you don't know anything about. Imagine having to buy that because you went to see it for 30 minutes, right? Like you had one showing that it was 30 minutes, maybe even 2, right? What's an hour? How can you investigate, right? And then you have to go and make an offer. in a bidding war. So this is why it's important that everyone understands what I'm saying about why did I choose to buy now, right? Yeah, it's you're never going to have the perfect scenario where you're going to sell at the perfect market and buy at the perfect market, unless you sell when it's really high, then go rent for a while and hope that something like this would happen when they say, hey, we're raising the interest rates, and all of a sudden prices come down. Nobody knew that. If somebody did that and sold their house at the peak of the market in 2021, like in January, and rented or went to live with family for 4 months and then bought, sure, they lucked out. But I say lucked out because nobody knew that this was going to happen. I mean, even if there was obviously these people that crunch numbers and they can predict stuff, it's still very difficult, right? So anyway, so my point is that buying is key. It's in my opinion more important than selling. So if you have questions, definitely reach out.
So we're up to the hour already. Time goes by when you're having fun, and Ari, it's been a pleasure. I you know what? Here's the thing. My wise words of today are, just be open. When you have an open mind, more things come to you. It's when you have a closed mind, is when you think you're beat, then you are.
Yeah.
All right, before we leave today, do you have any last moment thoughts?
Yeah, that last moment words is kind of along the lines of what you said. Ask questions. Don't finalize and think that this is it. It's never it. Ask questions, because that's when you ask questions is when you find the opportunity. Like you said, keep an open mind, right? So ask questions.
And on that note, if you do have any questions, you can write into us on either one of us. And we will be putting our links underneath, so you can send us an email and ask us questions, and we will go through them on other shows. And remember, it's always about looking at opportunities, because they're always around us. But it's the idea of keeping our eyes open so we see it. So until next week, thank you everybody for watching, and we hope that you make your day a special day. Thanks for you all. Be well. Bye-bye.